Guys, if you're new here, my name is Jennifer. I'm a full-time data analyst and a full-time IT baddie. On this channel, we talk about all things tech, from the fun stuff like the payday stuff, vlogs, advice, you name it. So if you like what you see and hear, don't forget to click subscribe, like, and do all of the nice things as we get into today's lesson. Guys, I remember being asked this question of when you do projects or when you want to practice for projects that you will put on your CV, where do you get the data to actually play around to make visualizations, graphs, and all of that, and practice with pivot tables, right? And guys, it doesn't necessarily have to be as complicated as you're making it out to seem. So when it comes to data that you need to play around with for your projects, either for practice or to put on your CV, you can either do it one of two ways. You can either use fake data that you have made yourself or made like via ChatGPT or any website like Kaggle, because they all have fake data, right? Either that or you use real data, and real data is actual data that is being published by a reliable source. For example, government data would be published on governmental websites so that you're able to use it and play around and infer your own results or do your own statistical analysis on the data. Now, when it comes to making visualizations and inferring conclusions from data, for CVs specifically or for practice, you don't necessarily always have to use real data. Sometimes the data that you find, like for instance, if you want to analyze COVID data, Ebola data, health data, economics data, sometimes for a lot of people who are beginners, it just becomes really boring, and you don't necessarily have to use real data in order to showcase your skills, because at the end of the day, these projects are just for you to show that you're able to use Excel very well, you're able to use SQL very well, Python very well, and not only that, but you're able to infer results from the data that you've just analyzed, also able to clean it, and you're also able to tell a hiring manager step by step what you did in order to get to this conclusion. So that's essentially the process that a lot of hiring managers and recruiters are looking for. So it doesn't necessarily have to be done with real data. You can always make up your own data on your own topic that you may find interesting. If you want to make up a superficial world with superficial data that is more interesting to you, you can go ahead and do it, as long as you're able to showcase that you're able to clean data, use pivot tables, use specific Excel formulas, and get to a conclusion and explain all of that very well. Then be my guest. Remember guys, the whole point of you doing these type of projects, as in making visualizations, pivot tables, data cleaning, and all of that, is not necessarily to show how pretty you can make graphs and all of that. It's really to show, hey, there's a question that can be asked from this data. I can analyze it, clean it, and then get to a conclusion and explain it to somebody else thoroughly. And this is supposed to essentially show a hiring manager that, hey, if they were to hire you, they would be able to see you do the exact same thing that you did basically for your projects on your CV in their workspace. So that's essentially what you're trying to do when you do projects for your CV and then you're going to showcase them in interviews. Let's say, for example, theoretically, I want to go on the official Ebola website, right, to compare Ebola cases year on year, right? So that's a question that you could probably analyze with anything. Same with COVID, same with like maybe food prices and all of that. That's an interesting question that you can pose to like the data that you're going to analyze. So the first thing that you would do is get the data from the correct source, clean it, and then do your pivot tables, use your formulas to infer the correct answer out of that. So let's say that from my comparison from 2023 to 2025, I've seen that Ebola cases have risen by 50%. So with that, a lot of hiring managers would theoretically use that data that you have practiced on and make a decision on it. So let's say we were giving this to a manager out there that from 2023 to 2025, Ebola cases have risen by 50%. So what they would do with that information is to use it and probably go to a lot of pharmaceutical companies and maybe encourage them to create medication relating to Ebola outbreaks, or maybe even going to news outlets to encourage them to, send warnings when it comes to Ebola outbreaks. Now, I'm saying that this is a theoretical situation. I'm not saying that this is statistically accurate. This is just an example to get you going as to what you would be doing with data, whether it's dummy data or real data, so that you can understand why you are doing it. And I think I'm going to end this video here. So don't forget that your homework is to like, subscribe, and do all of the nice things. Until I see you next time for the next lesson.